energy system development. You want to understand the player's demands. How does the coach want their team playing? Are they going to be a real high speed, hard running defensive unit? Or are they going to be more a contest, acceleration, speed sort of team? So, and that chaos. So understanding how they're going to want to play, and then ultimately putting in your program to add in a little bit extra. But your 80 to 90% should be preparing them to be able to ultimately run out a game, which is they're going to need aerobic work and they're going to need anaerobic work. So watch games, look at the GPS reports if you have access to them, and speak to coaches and analysts to get an understanding of how that player, what their strengths are, what their role demands, and then you can start to individualize that if you have the opportunity to at your club. To improve their efficiency with these, obviously running slow, anywhere under 4.5 minutes per second for most AFL athletes would be running at a steady pace, and then below that at jogging pace. You're not going to be using a lot of constraints around the drills in terms of like wickets and cones and adding extra perturbation tools, because it is quite a low stiffness required. There's not as much pre-tension that we need for that type of running, but we do want some tension. So that's where you working on cadence can be really important, using video so they're not sloppy through the ankle. And that's where dribbling from ankle, cuff and knee and bleeding that into a run can work really well when you're warming up and working on the efficiency of athletes. They can feel what it feels like to have still some form of pre-tension going through the body before they're running, and they're not just almost running, not even thinking about it at all. And move over to strength and power. Ultimately, this can be really effective for improving the contest of the team and acceleration. So exercises that I think are non-negotiables, you want to be squatting heavy or deadlifting heavy, like the trap bar deadlift. You'd be doing anywhere between 4 to 6 sets of low reps, 4 to 6 sets of 3 to 6 reps. And we want to be working at a heavy load. So you might be building them up to like a heavy set of 80% of their max, for example, with good rest in between, typically working every 3 minutes. So they can have good intent, good quality technique, as well as moving those moderate weights fast and explosively. Bench press, weighted chin-ups and bench pulls will be the same template. Then moving into more your power stuff. I love unilateral power work. Obviously, a lot of the game is unilateral in nature. So step-ups, banded step-ups, box jumps, single leg box jumps, single leg broad jumps, all that concentric power work. Moving into resilience, we want to be considering groins, calves, and hamstrings as the big 3 ticket ovens of games missed due to those soft tissue injuries. And if we put a good program in place, we can mitigate those. So we want to make sure we've got things like barbell RDLs for proximal hamstring, anywhere between 3 to 4 reps of 5 to 8 repetitions with good load. Make sure the feet are underneath the hips and that you're lifting around mid shin or as long as their hamstrings can allow before their back starts to curve. That's around. Weighted Nordics, 2 to 3 sets of 3 to 5 repetitions to get that peak force, which we can track on the Nord board. But ultimately we want to try and get as much force as we can eccentrically with those. Single leg RDL or single leg back extensions for unilateral hamstring development, typically 3 sets of 6 to 10 repetitions. Seated calf work if they're not doing sled marches for just that ankle stiffness work and targeting the soleus, which we know is highly active in all forms of running and a pretty prevalent injury for AFL footballers. And then lastly, speed. As I mentioned, we want to have minimal thigh gap between the swing leg and the stance leg on ground contact. Typically, we want around that mid-foot connection, stiff foot. So make sure that the big toes facing forwards as close as you can rather than vertically down. Looking for things like hip drop, which will result in a sloppiness through the hips. So therefore, you're going to spend more time on the ground, which is more muscle work, more strain on particularly things like soleus. So we want shorter contacts and active hips, nice stable pelvis. So we're efficient in our running pattern and reducing the amount of total work.